Welcome to the Antisocial Podcast. My name is Andy Dowling, and I play bass in the Australian heavy metal band Lord. We have a new album coming out really soon, and I don't know if we've announced anything by the time this episode comes out. If it has, go over to lord.net.au or follow us on any of the social media platforms. You'll be able to see whether we've announced anything yet. But we are really close to announcing something, so stay tuned. So if you're not following us, go and follow us on all the socials. We've got a new album coming out. We're going to have a single. There's a video clip coming, there's some new merch. There's lots of really cool things. Once we open the gates, we are on, and we're going to have a big year ahead. There's lots of cool things happening, but we're sort of at that moment where we're just trying to squeeze it out. So, that sounded bad. So we're getting there. So anyway, lord.net.au. If you love a bit of old school heavy metal, you can go over and check out the website. You can have a sticky beak. It's the easiest and quickest way to get a taste of what we're all about. There's streaming music over there. Links straight to Spotify. There's our video clips, our whole back catalogue. There's a lot of historical stuff, just lots of cool things. A really good website that Tim's put together for us. So go over there, lord.net.au. Really hope you enjoy the tunes. And if you've never heard of us before and you go and check out our music now, please send me a message and tell me what you thought. If you didn't like it, tell me what you thought. If you loved it, tell me what you thought. If you're a bit meh, tell me what you thought. I would love to hear from you. I really would, especially coming up with this new album now. I really would love to hear from you guys, especially people that have never heard of the band before. Enough of me. Lord.net.au. Yes. Now, I also host a second podcast called the Self-Starter Podcast, which is all about small business, self-employment, and freelancing. So, you might know somebody that's stuck in the office cubicle, the stereotypical cubicle, or working a job that they just absolutely hate and they just want to get out, and they keep talking about how crap their job is, but they don't do anything about it. Maybe Self-Starter's for them. Self-Starter talks about people in all different stages of their self-employment journey, whether they're about to open a business, they run their own business, they're a freelancer, maybe they earn a bit of pocket money on the side, do a bit of a side hustle, have a second or a third or a fourth job or whatever it might be. I cover them all. And you can go to selfstarter.com.au. There's a fortnightly podcast that comes out. Season 1 is wrapped up as of the end of December 2018. Season 2 will kick off in June of 2019. There is heaps of content to check out. I am churning out blog posts as we speak, so you can go over to selfstarter.com.au and check that out. So whether it's you or whether it's somebody that you know that might need that little dosage of inspiration, go and check it out. I hope you enjoy it. I'd love, once again, to hear your feedback. Shout out. This week's shout out. You guys all know the drill, but if you are new, each and every week I thank somebody that supports me, and it can be arranged in different ways. It could be a message of encouragement. It could be a review online somewhere, anywhere. Actually, it doesn't even have to be online. It could be in person. I was going to say IRL then. You could leave a message on a community notice board somewhere, pin something on it. If you do that, send a photo. That'd be really good. Anyway, you could do something like that. You could buy some merchandise from my online store over at Bandcamp, which is theandysocialpodcast.bandcamp.com. You could shout me a beer via the PayPal button over at andysocial.net. It could be a guest recommendation, whatever. It doesn't matter. Small, big, it helps me, keeps this whole thing moving. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears, probably more so the sweat and the tears go into this podcast. I absolutely love it, but when people do these little extras, it's so good. It just keeps the whole thing fueled, and I love it. I really appreciate it. So thank you so much to everybody. But this week's shout out is for Sam Flynn. Sam is from Burnie in Tasmania, and I should never have to look up a place, an Australian town or city, town, because I know where all the cities are, but I should never have to look up a town. Come on, Andy. Online, but I had to look up Burnie. And for anybody that's not familiar, Burnie is, now I'm gonna muck this up, but it's sort of northwest of the state of Tasmania, so sort of up the northwest sort of corner, kind of. And if people aren't familiar with Tasmania, especially for our international listeners who might only be familiar with a map of Australia that excludes the bottom right-hand corner little island that sits right down there. It is the little island of Tasmania, which is our state, and Burnie is in the northwestern sort of corner of that state. And I absolutely love Tasmania. I went on Street View and had a bit of a look in Burnie, and it looks like a nice little quaint town. And I always love going to Tasmania, and next time I go back, which I should go back soon because there's quite a few people that I need to get on the podcast that live down there, I might swing by Burnie, maybe. I don't know. Let me know. So the reason why Sam is getting a shout out on this podcast is he used the contact form on my website, andysocial.net. I couldn't believe it. There have only been about 3 people that have ever used this contact form since I got this website up and running in 2015. And I think one of them was me testing to see whether it works or not. So I got this email and I didn't know what it was. I'm like, where's this come from? And then I realized, oh, wow, it's off my website. And so it was just a really simple message that he sent, just encouraging me and thanking me for everything that he did. And he mentioned that he discovered the podcast through the Freddie Lim episode, which I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think it's 127 or 128 or something like that. Anyway, go back into the podcast archive and have a look for that. But Freddie Lim from Sonic, who's also a politician in the Taiwanese government. So really important person and a very interesting person who I caught up with when he was in Sydney earlier in 2018. But he discovered the podcast through that and he's been listening. And I really appreciate the message. And I appreciate that you using the contact form, because most people just use social media, and I guess I'm pretty easy to get a hold of on all the different socials. So I don't know why anybody would want to use the contact form, but I'm absolutely stoked that you have. So for your efforts, please send me a message. Give me some details of where you are, your postal address, and I will flick you out some stuff in the post, because we all love getting something in the mail, and I'll try to make sure it's not too much crap. So we'll see how we go. But shoot me a message. Thank you so much again, Sam. Really appreciate it. Love the use of that contact form. Please, more people use it. I love getting these emails. And it's still like I've got no idea where they come from. So it's great to see people using it. So thank you. This week's episode 165, is with Ladybeard. Ladybeard. How do I describe Ladybeard? Well, cross-dressing pro wrestler, death metal vocalist, musician, just this crazy entertainer and character, DJ. Now could almost be classed, well, I think he would definitely be a professional DJ now. He is a man of many, many talents, and a very, very unusual story and journey that he's had so far. And I've been trying to tee this up with Ladybeard for the past several months, and it just hasn't quite worked out, but we got some time. And we had a great chat. This is a real highlight for me, a real fun conversation. He is just such a fun guy to talk to, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this as well. If you want to learn more about Ladybeard and just check out his crazy website, go over to ladybeard.com. He's on all the socials as well. I'll put links to everything in the show notes over at andysocial.net, or you can click through on your podcast player as well. But we talk about all sorts of stuff. You could just imagine how many different possible things we could have talked about in this episode, and I like to think that we covered most of them. So we'll see how we go. But please, I'd love to hear your feedback from this one, because I really, really enjoyed it. Ladybeard.com. Enough of me. Please enjoy this really, really cool chat with the legend from Japan, originated from Australia, Ladybeard. The one thing that I noticed just blew my mind was you DJing in China.
Yeah, holy moly, that's a new thing. Wowzers!
Like there was like pyrotechnics. There's everything going on.
Yeah.
And these massive rooms.
Yeah, those shows are mental. So the club scene in China now is, oh my goodness. So let me tell you, man, China in general. So I used to live in Hong Kong, right? And when I lived in Hong Kong, I worked in mainland China a lot. So the difference that China has, like the change that's happened in China in 10 years is just night and day. It's amazing, because I was doing nightclub work in China 10 years ago as well, right? Yeah. And now doing it now, it's just like, what the hell? That country really is, it's remarkable, the development and how the pace at which has happened over there. But yeah, the club scene in China now, just for anyone who's, not familiar or doesn't go to clubs. So there'll be the DJ who's at the DJ booth doing his DJing, and then there's kind of a small stage that he can get up on above the, or he or she or they can get up on above the decks. But then behind the DJ and all over the roof and all over the walls are these enormous LED video screens. So they are just playing insane images the whole time. They have CO2 cannons blasting into the air. They have confetti falling out of the ceiling. There's like people with like CO2 cannons just like shooting the audience with CO2. It's freaking, oh my God, it's insane. And all the clubs have this. It's standard now. So I get to the club and they're like, yeah, those are your CO2 cannons, and these are the buttons that make the pyrotechnics go off. So enjoy. So I go, okay.
You have no idea how envious I am, because for us, like, playing in a band and touring all over the world, and even just in Australia, you're so pressed just to get like a couple of like colors in the lighting rig that are not red. You're trying to get a blue, you're trying to get a white light, so at least you get some half decent photos. But I mean, you're experiencing these places now where you've got that level of demand and popularity where it's just it's another level.
It really is. It's really wonderful, actually. But I got to for that particular stuff, I'll give credit to the club scene in China, because that's all that infrastructure is taken care of for you.
Yeah.
Like, you come into the club and they're like, "Here's all your infrastructure. Have fun." You're like, "Wow." Whereas when you're doing it rock and roll, is because you're in a band, that's all stuff the band has to provide themselves.
Yeah.
So like, a friend of mine in his old band, he worked with guys who had toured with Rammstein, who of course do all their pyro and everything, and all that pyro and all that awesome theatrics that Rammstein do, they're just bringing that in themselves. They're loading in at every venue. Same with Kiss. Like, Kiss's load-in takes a week or something, doesn't it, for every show?
Crazy the amount of stuff they've got.
Yeah, ridiculous, right? So in rock and roll, you have to provide all that yourself. In the clubs, that's all there for you. So it's really pretty cool from that perspective. You're like, right, well, I don't need to worry about that.
So that level of popularity that you've got in China, because a lot of that, so I guess from me and sort of being in the Western world, and probably I'm going to represent the whole Western world in this conversation. But I guess the perspective is that you've found the success in Japan, and you've got a real identity linked in with Japan. But your popularity, from what I can see, has exceeded that in China than it is in Japan in a way. So is it a case that you sort of found the foundation in Japan, and then through opportunity just tapped back into China again?
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So the China story is very fascinating, actually, because I came to Japan and I was working with my manager here back in like 2014, and our focus was on Japan. We were just thinking about the Japanese market. But of course, I used to live in Hong Kong, right? And so I had the China experience and whatnot. But we had a client who we worked with here who used to live in Shanghai and was at now back in Japan. But he was like, we're having a meeting with him one day about stuff in Japan. And he says, because I always had the plan to go into China after Japan, right? But he's like, hey, do you have a Weibo account? Weibo is like Chinese Twitter. Yeah. He's like, do you have Weibo? And I'm like, no. And he goes, okay, well, that there's like a ton of like Ladybeard accounts on Weibo, right? And they're just taking your photos off Twitter and posting them in China. We're like, what? So we go to Weibo. There were 2,000 fake Ladybeard accounts in China. We're like, what the hell? But here's what had happened. This is remarkable, right? These, like, essentially thieves had taken my photos from Twitter and posted them on Weibo, and had made me famous in China, like, behind my back. So
they did the hard lifting for you.
They did, bless them. So we start the official Weibo account, right?
Yep.
With our Chinese partner. We had this Chinese partner we started working with. We started a Weibo channel. And the first week, I'm just flooded with messages. Is this the real you? Is this the real you? Is this the real you? One week, 100,000 followers.
Wow.
Yeah, awesome, right? So I'm like, well, thanks, thieves.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, so go.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, actually. It's So that happened by accident, and but the Chinese just love all my cosplay work and whatnot. So I've been a huge celebrity in the Chinese anime scene for several years now, and now I'm in the clubs over there. It's like I'm very, very popular in China. I'm very lucky. Holy moly.
Yeah. So, I mean, is there plans for you in China? Because I've been doing a bit of stalking, and I watched your 2019 goals for the year video on your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
And you're talking about the media and the difference in the format of media in Japan versus China, and China's just got this exponential rapid pace of just utilizing technology that a lot of other parts of the world haven't even grasped or understood yet. So for you, I mean, obviously the club scene's there, but for China, I mean, how do you tackle that beast?
Well, it's actually very hard, because what tends to happen is, and this sort of happens in the Western world too, it just happens more slowly, in that you have, like, say, one platform, and you build up your presence in that platform, but then suddenly everyone stops paying attention to that platform and they go to a new one.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh God. So it's hard. To be honest, it's hard. You need to create your own networks and then work with them, and then hopefully all of them have their fingers on the pulse for promotion domestically. And so when you work with them, they can push you through their promotional networks, which are all those new platforms that people keep adopting and then rejecting, right? So, but it's very hard. The rate of change is it's so much faster than everywhere else. It's just crazy. So like now people are saying in the Western world, Facebook, it's all different now. And everyone's gone to Instagram instead of Facebook. And, then the algorithms change and that messes with you. That all happens times 10 for China. So it's like, what the? Yeah.
It's like our grandparents or even our parents like complaining about, things changing. And we're like, come on, you're living in the past. But really, it's a lot of the Western world that's just living in the past compared to what's happening in China.
Right. It's, well, I'm not sure if it's living in the past as such. It's just a matter of China's so fast with the adaptation. But then a lot of the time it's kind of trends come and then go extremely quickly. So there was this new platform that came out like a year ago, and my whole China team was like, we have to get on this thing. And so I go, okay. So we downloaded it and started trying to put videos on it. But then within 2 months or something, just no one's watching it at all anymore. And they're onto the new one. So like, oh God, okay. So it's just a matter of you're constantly just trying to stay up to date, and you kind of end up taking old content and reposting it to new platforms to give you the kickstart. So the people go, oh yeah, Ladybeard, the guy I used to follow over there who's now over here. Cool. And so then you can then pick it up from there with new content.
Oh, I saw something, it might have been on your website where, and I don't know if it's still happening now, but you had or have a fortnightly web broadcast, and it's something like 500,000 viewers tune in for this thing. Is this still happening, or is it something in the past? Or
no, that was happening. When did we stop that? We stopped that halfway through this year, I think. But yeah, we were doing that. We did that for 2 years straight, I think. But it's stopped now, sadly. But yeah, we did a lot of ridiculous stuff for China on that. The live streaming is a huge thing for China now too. Like a lot of content's getting consumed via live streaming. People are on their phones all the time in China, just all the time. Everything now is digital. Money is digital, so it's all like WeChat Pay. That's how you pay for almost everything. Yep. And if you can't do that, because of course if you're a foreigner, you can't necessarily access. You don't have a Chinese bank account, you can't access that kind of thing. If you're a foreigner and you're in China and you whip out cash to pay for something, a lot of the time it's like, what the hell is this? You're giving me paper paper money? What kind of dinosaur are you?
Oh, it's absolutely incredible. And the other thing I was really impressed with is that you are multilingual, and so you've developed a real sort of skill of being able to speak in different languages. And me digging in, as I do, I saw that a number of years ago, you did a couple of movies with, I think it was Michael Gleisner, or Glazner.
Yeah. Oh my God, you've seen that stuff. Oh my God.
Now, the reason why I bring him up is that I get into this rabbit hole. So I find one person, I go, oh, who's that guy? And then I click onto the next thing and I get deeper and deeper. But I don't know how or where or when you learnt Mandarin and even Cantonese, but with Mandarin, did you use Michael's business sexymandarin.com? And are you aware of it?
I watched a couple of the Sexy Mandarin videos on YouTube. Yes, I did. I must admit, I found them fantastic. I was like, "Well, MG, good job. You've done well."
I'll tell you what, because I saw his name, I thought I'll just have a look and see what else he's done, and he said entrepreneur. So I thought, oh, okay, let's see what he's up to. And then it just said Sexy Mandarin. I thought, all right, I better click on it. Let's have a look. And look, anybody listening that wants to learn Mandarin, I think this possibly could be a very, very good way to grasp the language. So give it a shot, folks.
Yeah, Sexy Mandarin. Check out Sexy Mandarin. My former employer, Michael Gleisner, bless him.
Incredible.
Yeah, God bless. No, I think he did very well with that Sexy Mandarin thing. What was interesting to me is, so what Michael's done down in Cebu in the Philippines is quite remarkable, because he went in already. So Michael, I don't want to say information that's not that I have misunderstood and then be inaccurate. But my understanding is he became rich during the .com bubble in the 90s. Yeah. So, yeah. So he was a tech millionaire who then set up a movie studio in Cebu in the Philippines. And he's done wonders for the economy down there, as far as I understand. Like, he set up the studio on this island called Mactan, which like kind of has the airport, and then it was the airport and then slums and a couple of 5-star hotels. And like, that was all for a long time. He came and set up his studio, and apparently the whole place is gone through crazy development. So good job, MG. Incredible. Good job developing the economy of third world nations. Bless him. When did you learn Mandarin? I learned. Well, I'm just studying now because I work in China all the time, so I've got to study. I used to live in Hong Kong, so I learned Cantonese there. Yeah. And then Cantonese and Mandarin are kind of annoying, right? Because they're similar enough that you can see the similarities between the two, but not similar enough that you can't just use one in place of the other, right? So because you have to learn both, which is, well, you don't have to learn anything really, you do whatever you want. But like my Cantonese was like, I couldn't go to mainland China and just speak Cantonese, not knowing what the hell I was talking about. So I mean that now I've had to study Mandarin so that I can do my stuff in China. But with the languages, mate, I tell you what, it's just, people ask me all the time about how to do the languages. And there really is no trick. You just go and study, just study.
Did you, even before you moved to Japan, did you have a little bit of a grasp of the language, or did you pick it up when you were there like you were in Hong Kong with Cantonese?
No, all of it. I've just studied as required. So I learned German in high school. And we did Latin in high school as well. So I think Latin, despite being a dead language, is quite helpful for future language learning because it kind of sets your brain up to understand grammatical points and whatnot very well. Yeah. So learning Latin definitely helped me learn German. And then I think the experience of learning German in a formal school setting meant that I sort of understood the learning infrastructure enough to be able to teach myself the next languages because I could remember what we did in German to get the skills. So I try to apply the same concepts to my own studying, right? But no, I turned up in Hong Kong without knowing any Cantonese, just busted my ass and figured it out. When I decided that I was going to be going to Japan, I started studying, but I was still terrible when I arrived. I was terrible at Japanese when I arrived. So just worked hard, got immersed, figured it out, then got popular in China. All right, I'm going to have to learn Mandarin now. So I just started studying that, figured it out, right?
And it probably helps you a little bit as well where, I mean, I've noticed when I've gone to Japan over the years, even just making the effort when having an attempt at learning or trying to speak the language earns a lot of respect with the locals. So for you, even going into the Chinese market, even just the examples of you making the attempt and learning along the way probably builds a lot of respect with the Chinese market.
Yeah, it's good in that way, but China's been very aggressive with their English learning, which is very interesting. So actually I found that it's very funny. They sort of don't want me to speak to them in Mandarin. They want to speak to the foreigner in English. It's the same in Hong Kong. Everyone wants to speak to the foreigner in English, right? But that being said, when it comes down to it, when you want to talk nitty gritty, then they do appreciate the Mandarin because you can, communicate in depth, right? So it's the languages and what they mean around the world become very, very fascinating things. Like in Japan, you pretty much have to speak Japanese because no one, like the standard of English is extremely low, right? But then in mainland China, they're incredibly proud, Hong Kong too, they're incredibly proud of their English skills. And so when they see a foreigner, they want to speak English and whatnot. So it's funny how things like languages and culture end up playing a role in people's, I guess, what's the correct word for it? Self-esteem, I think, is not the correct term. The kind of people's role in interactions,
Yeah.
I'm not expressing myself. I'm not expressing myself very well. I apologize.
No, that's all right. No, that's fine. And I mean, it's one thing because I know little bits and pieces, words and a couple of phrases to get me by when I'm traveling. But for the most part, I was one of those kids that went through school where a foreign language to learn was more of this sort of afterthought, sort of hobby subject that was never taken seriously or put a lot of pressure on us as students. So,
right.
and because you would have been the same in a way where, we're living in a English dominated country, so your exposure to different languages is very, very different. And limited, I should say. So it makes it hard to grasp a language. And I guess the advantage that you probably had along the way is being immersed in these countries where you're not only learning, but you're seeing examples of that along the way as well.
Yeah, the immersion definitely helps because you have to figure it out, right? Like you're eating the same thing every night until you figure out how to say something different, So, so yeah, the immersion definitely helps, and having the daily saturation, that definitely helps a lot. Have you, when you say you're traveling, have you toured a lot with Lord, or is this just your personal traveling?
Both. So, yeah, we've toured a fair bit with Lord over the years, and we've played in Japan about 5 or 6 times over the years, and through Europe and North America as well. Yeah, so we've done a bit over time, but I try to get out there as well if I can't twist the other guy's arms, and I'll try and gallivant around the world and see where I can end up. So it's fun. It gives you an appreciation of, I guess, where you come from, but also I think it just opens up your mind to a lot of different possibilities. And I've mentioned this to other people as well, where I think your level of compassion for other people just grows immensely as well.
Yeah, I think so. I've realized how lucky we are in Australia. Just what we get for free being born Australian. It's just remarkable, right? So it's taught me real compassion and appreciation for what I've got traveling. So Lord is an awesome band. How long have you guys been kicking for? It must be quite a while, yeah?
Yeah, we've been around for... Oh, well, hang on. I'm going to lose track of time. So the band, as the name Lord, has been around since 2005, so about 13 years. But we used to be called Dungeon before that, and Dungeon's been around since 1989. So certainly.
Oh my god!
Yeah, so we've got a couple of older guys in the band.
I'm the youngest. 89.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Hang on, so you guys have a 20-year career in that case. That's very impressive.
Yeah, we've got a few tunes, stockpiled up now over the years. A bit of a back catalogue, so it's good. There's never short of a tune.
Well, that's good. Do people confuse you with Lordy from Europe?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And Lord from New Zealand as well. So,
right.
Yeah.
What do you do? Have there been any lawsuits or anything like that?
No. It's been, I think we're too much of a small fish for anybody else to really worry about. And for us, it's, you sort of embrace the joke if anyone wants to bring it up, or sometimes they accidentally find you and they listen to your music and pleasantly surprised. So,
which is great.
Yeah, you just roll with it.
You guys did that hilarious cover of the Kylie Minogue song.
That's the one.
On a Night Like This.
Yeah.
That is very funny, my friend. Were you in the band already at that time?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Were you Kylie in the video?
No. A lot of people thought that it was, but no. We had a friend of ours decide to take on the role as Kylie, and he rocked up on the day, and for us leading into it, this was a person that was a bit of a party animal and loved to have a drink, and that's when he really sort of let loose. And so we thought, we bought a few beers for him, and we wanted to just sort of get him lubed up and get him ready to go. And he rocked up, he said, "Oh no, I've got to drive today." And we went, "Oh no, he's going to lose that magic. He's not going to have it in him."
Right.
And he just, as soon as that camera was ready to go, he just switched and he was in mode. He was in character, and it was so good. It worked out so well for us. So I'll never...
He's an actor. That's fantastic.
It was really good. It was really, really good. So yes, that helped us quite a bit. It's a blessing and a curse, because I think for some people over the years, it sort of defined us, but it brought in a lot of other people that never heard our music or never even liked metal as well. So it was a great sort of way to sort of warm people to the genre of metal, and suddenly they go, I like this, and it's got some heavy guitars, and then suddenly they start to listen to a couple of the related songs if they're looking on YouTube, and so you win a couple of people over. So it was really good. It was a good tactic at the time for us.
That's excellent. Yeah, my favourite songs are metal covers of pop songs. I am a connoisseur for a metal cover of a pop song. absolutely love them.
Well, I was going to ask you as well. I was going to leave it till later, but this might be a really good time to talk about it. I mean, you are a metal fan, and I've seen you online sort of talking about your love of metal. I've seen you rock up at friends' shows in Japan as well. I've seen you rock up with the Frankenbach guys or Psychroptic.
Yeah,
You're wearing
that was all. Yeah.
Wearing a Psychroptic hoodie and an Earthrot shirt, and so what sort of metal bands do you like, or do you listen to, or what's even just sort of throwback bands? What's something that you keep going back to all the time?
I mean, my big ones are Slipknot, Rammstein, and Wednesday 13. Do you know Wednesday 13?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I love Wednesday so much. Yeah, those guys. I mean, before them, when I was kind of younger, I got into metal through the wonderful gateway drug of new metal. So Korn, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, and all that, right?
Yeah.
But then that led me to Slipknot and whatnot. Then Slipknot got me into heavier stuff from there. Those are my three big ones: Slipknot, Rammstein, and Wednesday 13. But I really love a lot of different metal, man. I mean, in recent years, I kind of went through a big metalcore phase because I quite like the melodic stuff. So metalcore has those very kind of like kind of heavy guitars, but it also has the melody, which I quite like. Despite the fact I'm not a teenage girl. And then and then recently I've been into a lot of deathcore. Do you know this band Drown in Sulphur?
No, I don't.
Check out Drown in Sulphur. They're freaking insane. There's this YouTube channel called Pure Core TV. So all the bands on that are freaking brutal, man. Deathcore is it's a different dimension. As someone who always listened to metal and I was into all the melodic stuff, once you go into something like deathcore, when the whole song is it's like when I was younger, I felt like there was nothing for me to hold on to in there. Like there wasn't a melody for me to kind of grasp, and I would end up kind of vaguing out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't concentrate. Yeah, but recently with deathcore, I've been like, oh my God, this is awesome. And it's because it's sort of like having a metal drip in your arm. Do you know what I mean? It's like it constantly feeds you power. Because that's why I like metal. It's the empowerment.
I was going to say, it's that different type of energy, isn't it? And I mean, for you doing wrestling and a lot of stuff that involves physical activity, you need something sort of, it's almost like that soundtrack that you've got that accompanies you as you do what you do. And even, I was going to say, like, referencing metal, I mean, you're showing that and elements of that in your live show as well. So, I mean, thank you, sir. When you started to, I guess get that foundation in Japan, had you already sort of had the blend of that concept of adding elements of metal into your live show? Was that something that came later on?
Yeah, well, the live show started. So it's when I say I'm a connoisseur of metal covers of pop songs. The metal show started actually as me doing metal covers of Cantonese pop songs. So, so I got to Hong Kong, right? And for the sake of learning Cantonese, I found the local Canto pop artists, and I was listening to their songs. And I was like, these are really catchy songs. Who's made the metal covers? I want to hear the metal covers. And then no one had. So I was like, oh wow, well someone should do that. And then a few years later, I said, you know what? Nuts to this. I'm going to do that. If no one else has done it, I feel it must be done. I'm going to do it. So I started out. That was like how my music career began, doing metal covers of Cantonese pop songs.
Wow, that's the most random thing in the world.
Yeah, bro. As a white person, that's right.
And so, really quickly, what do they call Cantonese pop music? Is there a certain, like, I know we've got J-pop and K-pop and things like that. Is there something with that?
Cantonese pop is Canto pop.
Canto pop. Okay,
and then,
there you go.
Yeah, and Mandarin pop is Mando pop.
Oh, really? Oh, there you go. Nice and easy.
Yeah, right. All the countries have their own pop, actually. I just heard about the Vietnamese one, which is called, like, V-pop or something. V-pop, but they all have one. Like, Nepal has some kind of Nepalese pop or something. They've all got their own local pop music.
Incredible. And then I guess for you, being able to blend these things together is just gives you that new element, that point of difference that makes you even more unique than what you're already putting out there.
I mean, I think so. It's kind of a blessing and a curse, because it means at the same time you don't have a specific bunch of people that you're talking to. You end up kind of talking to the people on the fringes of several different genres or several different activities.
Yep.
But that does mean you kind of develop your own core base of fans who like appreciate your uniqueness, if you know what I mean.
What's your demographic look like is it different compared to like countries like China and Japan, or is it sort of the same no matter where you are?
It really is. And what I'm learning more and more, and this makes sense in hindsight, but I'm like through experience, I'm really learning it, is that a bearded white person in a skirt, a bearded white man in a skirt, means something different inside every culture.
Right.
So, a particularly bearded white person in a skirt who became famous in Japan. So, like in America and also in Australia and the Western world in general, my fans tend to be people who are like people who love Japanese culture, so anime kids and whatnot, and also there's metalheads in there as well. And also people who just kind of like interesting stuff, because of course if I come home to Australia, I don't have like the foreigner factor anymore.
Yeah. And
in America I do, but it's, you know, it's not the same as I got the foreigner factor here, right? So when I go to other white person countries, it tends to be metalheads, mainly J culture fans and anime fans, and then interesting thing fans.
Yeah.
But then in Japan, it's totally different, of course, because saying anime culture in Japan is kind of, well, that's just watching cartoons to the Japanese, you know?
Yeah.
There are certain subcultures that go along with it and whatnot, but it means something totally different. So in Japan, my fan base started out as all young girls, as in females aged sort of 18 through 30. And then that fan base is then kind of expanded to cover all kinds of people, actually. As I do collaborations with different Japanese artists, then I pick up fans from their fan base. So when I did Ladybeard with the 2 kids, then suddenly I was used to doing shows for a room full of young girls, and now suddenly I'm doing shows for a room full of old dudes. I'm like, okay, this is strange. Yeah. Then working with Reika, she has a totally different fan base. I do a collaboration with this little girl who plays the drums called Murata Tamu, and then her fans are a different demographic again. So you end up kind of picking up fans from all these different places, and you have this melting pot of a fan base at the end of the day.
Is that overwhelming for you?
No, it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelming at all. The challenge with having eclectic fan bases is you still want to be able to talk to everyone in the voice that resonates with them. So if everyone is in the same place and they're all from different backgrounds, then it can be difficult to speak with the voice that's going to resonate with all of them. But I mean, for me, like in Japanese, it's, if I could just get my point across, then I'm doing quite well already. So yeah, so it's all good.
It's fascinating. Sorry, no, continue.
No, that's fine. You go.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really fascinating. I mean, just for somebody, I think a lot of people these days try to be sort of multi-skilled and multi-dimensional in their identity. Like they, especially I can always reflect back to musicians because that's where I'm most familiar with. But musicians are more, they're starting their own businesses on the side. They're being sort of more entrepreneurial. They're putting their own name out there instead of just sitting behind a band name, and they're getting their own identity. And there's a lot of challenges around that. And I think being Australian as well has always been a challenge, and I've brought this up quite a bit on the podcast with other Australian artists, where we've come from this tall poppy syndrome culture, and so for us to put our neck out and say, "This is who I am and this is what I do," it can be a challenge, and I think it's getting better. But I think for you, and I'm just making a massive assumption here, but I'm thinking for you, it would have been another level again, because, for us, maybe, doing art or music or things like that, it's one thing. But I think for you, because what you're doing is so visual and so high energy and very different to what I guess the stereotypical Australian culture is used to. For you, you obviously went abroad to find your place and your success and things like that, but did you have apprehension just because you lived in that Australian culture to put yourself out there that way?
Yes, and it was not apprehension to put myself out there as such. It was more a total misunderstanding of how the audiences overseas would react to me. because you're totally right, we do have our tall poppy syndrome, and it's actually, I really wish we could do away with that. Like, I think as a nation we would progress. All of us would be lifted up if we could get rid of that whole tall poppy bit. But if you do anything in Australia, if you don't pop perfectly and you're not one of the cool kids, then it's dickhead, so right. But that's when you go into cultures where they don't have that and the value system is different. It's strange coming in as a performer because you're still holding on to that yourself. So I would say, like, to my Japanese managers, no, that's not going to work. We can't do that. Everyone will hate me if we do that. And they'll be like, what are you talking about? Like, so for instance, in Japan, right, in Japanese culture, there's this concept of gambarimasu, which is extremely important to the Japanese, which means that you're trying really hard and you're doing your best and you're not necessarily succeeding. But the important thing is you're doing your best and you're really trying hard. This is what the Japanese appreciate. They appreciate seeing you try, right? So we, like, at the start of my career, like, my managers would say, okay, I want you to do this and this and this. And I was like, yo, I can't do that because I won't do a good job of it. And people will think I'm a douche and we'll lose all the fans. And they're like, no. People appreciate the fact that you're trying, you see. So it's cultures are a crazy thing. And to exist within several different cultures is very confronting because you have to get off the airplane and remember where you are and remember who these people are and how they're going to react to you.
I can't even begin to imagine, because that's definitely another level of awareness that I think you've got to have of yourself, which is already a challenge if you're putting on different types of personas and you've got something that you put out there as far as an identity, to be able to then have to blend, or so not blend, but to be flexible depending on your audience. That's another thing altogether.
Yeah, it really is, and it's a work in progress. Like, I'm learning all of this as I go along, and I'm kind of talking it out to you now because these are things that I kind of keep in my head whilst I'm off with the fairies by myself most of the time, and then being able to have someone who's also Australian, who's also a musician, who understands, like, the fan interaction and whatnot, who's also toured, to be able to talk to someone now who kind of understands the experience to a certain degree, to now talk it out in English is very helpful for me, actually, because this is stuff I've been carrying around in my head by myself the whole time for the past, 2 years or something. So I appreciate you letting me talk it out, sir.
No, not a problem. It's good to talk to somebody that's experiencing what you're experiencing, because I think for us and for many people that don't have that, and I don't want to use the word, but it's perceived as an extreme lifestyle just because it's very different, I guess, from a Western point of view. And so to hear your comments and even your perspective of what you're experiencing along the way, it's quite fascinating. And for me, I mean, I think one thing that I noticed years and years ago when I first went to Japan in 2005, and the first thing I noticed was how different the crowds were. And this sort of ties into what we're saying about, your audience is very different depending on where you are and the type of audience in front of you. But the Japanese it really threw me considerably because they're incredibly polite and very nice people. And that was something I wasn't used to coming from Australia or a lot of the Western world. People go out of their way and treat you so well and with so much respect. But in a live setting, and being a metal band, one thing that I just couldn't, it took me a while to get my head around it, but you would play your set and you're playing a song and they're getting into it, they're loving it, they've got their hands up in the air, they're singing along, and then you stop your song and then the room just goes dead silent. And you just go, and the first time this happened, I just thought, oh my God, like, what's going on? Like, what happened? And it really threw us. And it took a few tours for us to really sort of get our heads around it. And even when we go back, that first show back is a bit of a shock. We have to sort of remember and go, oh, that's right. Now, when we play with Japanese bands, we watch the way that they interact, and it's very, very fascinating. And I've never seen it anywhere else in the world where when in between songs, it's like they're having a conversation with the crowd, and it's very low key.
Yes.
And they're going into,
Yes.
and it goes for ages, and you're sitting there going, what are they talking about? And so
Yep.
the vocalist is, having this conversation. He's probably saying what he did that day and whatever. And the crowd sort of has a little bit of a polite chuckle. And then he starts screaming like the intro for the next song, and they kick in and the whole crowd goes nuts. And so for us, we thought, well, we can't really do that. So we attempted to sort of throw some Japanese, out there in between. But it got to a point where like they were smirking and they were responding, but it was so low key, and we felt like we were losing the energy in between the songs. So we just started screaming in between the songs. So we would just yell out Tokyo or Osaka, and so then they would just yell back at us, and so that's what kept our set going. Nowhere else in the world, like nowhere else we've ever played, we've ever had to think about that way. And I've watched some of your videos online and just some of the stuff that you've done in front of crowds in Japan as well, where you work that crowd really well in between those dead spots. And you sort of
you're kind. Thank you.
And you keep them going because they are so polite, and it's almost like they don't want to interrupt whatever you might be about to say.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's also, again, it's cultural. Like, that's how the Japanese are taught to consume a concert experience. But that's the reaction that every Western artist has coming through. I interviewed Corey Taylor from Slipknot earlier this year for Slipknot and Stone Sour, and he said the exact same thing. That was his like big thing he notices about coming to Japan. He's got to get here and he's got to readjust to the politeness and the silence between songs and so forth. Thank you. I appreciate your compliment, sir. Thank you very much. You know who also handled that very well? By the way, and what you did in handling that, I think, is an excellent choice. That's one of the only good choices there is for handling that when you can't speak Japanese. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I commend you on that choice. There's a band from Sydney called Capture the Crown. Do you know them?
I've heard of.
They're freaking awesome. Shout out to the Capture the Crown boys. When they came through Tokyo, they did an excellent job of that. And so I saw Capture the Crown on the same bill as a bunch of other international bands. And Capture the Crown had a much warmer communication with the crowd because they kept things very simple. And the crowd was actually able to respond. Whereas the other bands, there were I won't say who, but there were American bands on the bill. And between songs, they're like, and they're going off these big spiels in fast English. No one in the crowd knows what the hell they're talking about, right? So, keeping it simple and interactive like that is the best way to do it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had that challenge where, in Australia or even just in probably we had some challenges in parts of Europe, but in Australia we've just got that Aussie larrikin sort of approach. So if we are going to talk in between songs, it's usually self-deprecating humor. We'll take the piss out of each other. And we'll talk to the crowd, but it's very larrikin, style that we have, but that doesn't translate into other cultures. And so we've got that adjustment period where we sort of go, oh, that's right. We can't really some cultures don't get sarcasm, or they don't get that whole taking the piss sort of thing that we do back and forth. Yeah. So you've got to make it.
Why would you say that about yourself?
That's right. I don't understand. You're fine.
Right.
So it's just that awareness, and it's something that it's a very hard thing to do, but it is impressive when your audience tends to grow and it becomes more diverse. And I think for you, having those different demographics of people that you've been able to find and I'm trying to think of a better word, but collect just from your different collaborations with people, you've really got to be on the ball with just remembering who's in front of you or who's showing up.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, basically. And, like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. But you're right. You do have to remember where you are a lot of the time and what things actually mean. Back to these club shows in China. So here's what's interesting. My first one of them, I was on stage and whatnot, and I'm communicating with the crowd in Mandarin, as I would tend to do when trying to communicate with a Chinese person. So after the show, I get told, hey, you got to stop speaking Chinese on stage. You got to speak English on stage.
Wow.
Because that's what the fans want. Yeah, because that's what the fans want to see. They're like, I've come to see an international DJ. So international DJs speak English. So
The whole
like, okay,
experience.
cool. So the next show, right? So that's exactly right. Now that's fine because it's cultural and it's their set of values and, you know, whatever, right? But so the next day I get on stage and I'm speaking in English, and what I notice is that there's no actual communication happening. It's all just they want to see the international DJ. They want to hear the international DJ speak English, but it's not necessarily a communication that it's for. It's just for, yeah, English in front of me, you know, right? So you learn who the audiences are and what they value and what everything means to the audience and and how to create the experience for every individual separate audience.
So I guess in a set of circumstances like that, what you're saying in English, it's sort of like the same sort of concept of, you know, a Westerner musician going to Japan and having to, I don't like to use the word simplify, but just shorten down the message of what you're saying, but making it more animated rather than it just being conversational. And I assume that's what you have to do.
Yes, and also incorporate all your non-language communication tools. Because, of course, if I want to say, like, if I say to you now, all right, Andy, you're ready to get excited, but then I say the exact same thing into you in Japanese, and you can't speak Japanese. Just from the tone of my voice, you know that you're now supposed to go, yeah, right? So there's a lot of that ends up happening there. But you have a lot of insight yourself, my man. Tell me about your stuff, bro. So you've been in Lord for how many years now?
Oh, about 13, going to 14 years. So yeah, it's
13. Holy moly!
It's been
and how long has? Sorry.
No, go.
I was going to say, how long has this podcast been in existence for?
Oh, going into its 4th year now. So about 160 plus episodes that have been out so far. So it's been good.
That's awesome.
It's a nice way to, I don't know, just to get to reach out to different people. And for me, it was a good development tool because you spoke to the same people that you were like-minded with, like musicians and just that sort of inner circle. And for me, this was a great tool to it was a good excuse to reach out to somebody that I had no prior connection with and just say, I find you interesting and would you like to be on my podcast? And I'll ask you a bunch of questions and forgive me in advance if they're dumb, but I have no idea. And it's a good conversation. And I've just learned so much over the last few years.
Oh, good. That's excellent. No, I appreciate you bringing me on, man. I really do. How do you enjoy podcasting as a medium?
It's challenging, I think, from just being your own person. And I think it's like anything, you know, when you're reliant on your own discipline, you know, and keeping consistent and things like that, no matter what you do, it's always a challenge. And I think it's a real sort of development of character where you've got to experience either the attention or the non-attention. So sometimes you put out an episode and nobody really cares or they don't listen, or other ones strike really, really well and you get some great feedback, but you just keep going no matter what. And it's like anything, but I think putting your voice out there without instruments, without noise, without a lot of music or a lot of volume can be it can put you in a vulnerable position. So it was hard to begin with, but it's like my life's changed because of it. I've really learnt a lot about myself and people around me just from, having a couple of microphones and calling people up or getting out and meeting people in person. It's been really cool. And I mean,
that's fantastic.
Have podcasts taken off at all in Japan as far as, you know, even just with the Japanese language? And I know obviously English is not big in Japan, but, you know, locally in Japan, are there podcasts?
They exist. I mean, I'm not personally really sure. I'm not personally sure how big a deal they are. I mean, all the ones that I listen to are in English. So I don't really know, to be honest. That's a great question. I might try and find out about that, actually. That's a great question.
Yeah, it was one thing that I noticed, because I was in Japan last in May, and I've got a whole bunch of friends that live in Japan, really interesting people, and all native Japanese. And I was messaging these people in advance saying, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? And They were all the most polite declines I've ever received because they were so self-conscious about speaking in English, and I think just too polite. I think I got the impression, and a couple of them sort of articulated in the way that unless it can be perfect or to the standard that they want themselves, they won't do it. And
I understand that completely.
And I can understand that as well. But for me, I was like, I would love to talk to so many really, really interesting people in Japan. And that's an ongoing pursuit of mine when I do go over to pin down a few people that are willing to throw it on the line and have a chat and see where it takes us.
All right, well, maybe I can introduce you to some people. When's the next time you're over here?
June.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, first things first, let's get together.
All right, done.
All right, cool. Secondly, okay, I'll try and find some try and find some interesting people to hook you up with.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, cool. Especially, actually. Leave that with me. I'll see who I can come up with.
The cogs are turning.
The cogs are turning in Ladybeard's brain, in the lady brain. Let me just as well right now, let me compliment you on your enunciation, I should say, because you have very, very pleasant to the ear English.
Oh.
And, and to be honest, as an Aussie metalhead, I was expecting, Ladybeard, that's what I was kind of expecting from you. So I'm very impressed with your clarity of enunciation and also the tone of your voice. I'm finding it very, very pleasant on my ears listening to you.
I'm so glad we had this conversation tonight. It's exactly what I needed.
Good. I'll give you the old self-esteem boost.
I love it. Hey, speaking of self-esteem boost, I noticed, and this is me snooping once again, and I was on your website and I was compelled to click on the shop link. And
bless you.
I thought, let's have a look at some of this merchandise. And first of all, I was disappointed because I couldn't find a deadlift Lolita shirt on there. Well, from what I could see.
There are none of them?
Or at least,
my God, we better fix that. Okay.
I don't know. I'll have to have another look, but I couldn't see one. But you've got your own action figure.
Yeah, that thing's awesome.
It looks so cool. Like it is. And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, that's that. I mean, I don't know if it's for you, but for me, I mean, from a little bit of an ego boost, that would be sort of like one of those bucket list moments where you think, oh, that's kind of cool.
Oh, mate, it was the coolest thing ever. When that thing turned up, I was like, oh, this is epic. It's so cool. Oh, goddamn. Yeah, no, I love that thing. It's freaking great. It sits on a high shelf in our office. I love it.
And I mean, it's such an eclectic mix of things that you sell. And I guess, I mean, part of it's very Japanese. And I would assume that store's set up, for the most part, for Japanese consumers. Would that be right?
Yes, but I mean, I'll be honest, I'm very bad. Like, I don't know that much about putting together stores. So that's all been done on my behalf.
Yeah.
And thank you to the people who did it. So I don't know that much about it, to be honest. But regarding like the merch table at shows, that's totally a different system in Japan. Here's what tends to happen in Japan. So, and this comes from the idol culture. The idols are the Japanese normally. Oh, yeah, the idols are the Japanese pop stars, right? So there's girl idols, like the girls I was in Lady Baby with, they're idols. And there's also male idols. So, like, you know, the Japanese boy band guys, those are idols. And also, interestingly, visual kei bands. Oh, they are also idols. You know what visual kei is, yeah? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Those guys are sort of like male idols. They're like rock and roll idols, right? But the idol system is a funny one, and it's still something I'm trying to grasp. I don't completely understand it. But here's how I think it operates. You have, normally, in the context of very young girls, that's the one I'm most familiar with because they're the ones I work with, so let's talk about that. You have a bunch of girls on stage singing and dancing, and commonly they start doing this when they're extremely young.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the girls in baby metal, they started baby metal when they were 9.
That's crazy.
So
wow.
Yeah, so that gives you a concept of how young they are, right? So a lot of the time when they're teenagers or tweens, they start this, and because they're so young, they start singing and dancing, and most of them are not child prodigies, so most of them are pretty terrible when they start.
Right.
And this is the idea. Their fan base, which is a bunch of old dudes who gain value from watching underage girls sing and dance terribly. I'm not going to apply any labels or adjectives to such a concept, but everyone listening can apply whatever adjectives you like. Yep. These old dudes turn up and they decide, oh, I like that girl and I want to encourage her to try harder. Again, getting back to that try hard kind of culture. I want to encourage her to try hard so that she gets better. And so what he does is he goes, and at the merchandise table there'll be the group's merchandise, but there'll also be things that appeal to each individual member of the group. And he will, that girl will be the girl he wants to push, and so he will buy a mountain of merchandise. And the idea, it's not about I want the t-shirt, it's all about I want to push that girl, and so I want to encourage her to get better. And so a lot of the time, the merch sales revolve around I want to take a photo. When I say I mean fan. Fan wants to take a photo with their favorite member or with all the members, and they need to buy X units of Y merchandise in order to be able to take the photo.
Wow.
So a lot of the time it's just selling the merch, so it doesn't really matter what the merch is because it's just a means to the end of getting the photograph. So as some of it gets really ridiculous, sometimes you have to buy several copies of the same item to get what you actually want, which is the photo. But to a Western group, the photo would be free, right? But that does not happen here. If you want the photo, you gotta buy like 5 units of the same CD or something. It's really a strange system for a Westerner to be part of, man. It really is. Because from my perspective, I'm like, yo, you guys are treating the fans like dirt. But that's a Western perspective, right? From the Japanese perspective, that's actually what the fans are there for. They kind of want to... I'm trying to explain what I think I understand about this without properly understanding it. What the fans want, what they want is to kind of be in a position of servitude to this idol that they are trying to encourage to get better. And it's almost like a slavery kind of relationship or a worship kind of relationship. It's a very strange thing to behold, to be honest. And then trying to explain it again in English is like, what? Like, so odd.
It's incredible because, even being a Westerner in Japan and being a performer, it's not the same as that idol worship, but you get a taste of it. You get a slight, you get a little bit of an experience of it. And for us, the first time we went over there, we would have a Japanese record label, so they would have locally printed CDs there ready to go, but then they would also have extra booklets that they asked us to sign in advance. So we'd be sitting in the green room signing 1 million booklets, and then they would all be there, and so they'd be there to sell as well at the table. And then there would be, in some cases, there'd be pictures of us that we would sign, that they would sell the pictures. And and the value that they put on this was just... for us, and you said before, for us, things such as photos and all that sort of stuff there's no value attached to it. It's just that's what it is. And can you imagine us in Australia selling, a piece of paper with a picture of us with signed on it or a booklet? Everyone would call us a wanker. But,
totally. Sell out!
Yeah, that's right.
Sell out!
Absolutely. But in Japan, it's completely acceptable. And even when we started to go back each time, we developed friendships with people, but there would also be these fans who were absolutely pleasant and amazing people, but they would come with gifts each time. They would have photos from the last time that we were there. We've got friends in different cities that every time we meet up with them, whether we're playing or traveling on our own, and we go somewhere to eat and drink, they've got their video camera and they're documenting the entire night. And it's just for them. And when you come back a year later, then they've got a copy on DVD for you. And it's like, oh, thanks, I think. And I've got a box full of DVDs from just sitting in restaurants, eating and drinking. And I guess I could watch them every once in a while and there'd be some funny stuff. But it's just so different, and it's
Yeah.
a different appreciation, which and obviously there's extremes that can get a little bit concerning at times, but there's also this amazement where it's just like, wow, it's the appreciation that they do show is just something that it's very hard to replicate anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like I was saying, it's a totally different cultural value system to do with the relationship between the artist and the fan, and what that relationship means.
Do you have any influences at all? Like people that influence you in, whether it be sort of in your earlier stages of performing or even now, or what sort of inspires you?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, a lot of other metal singers really were my big influences. So Corey Taylor from Slipknot, he's been a huge one for me. Marilyn Manson was very influential to me. Wednesday 13, and Wednesday was very also Till Lindemann from Rammstein. So I've always been into those huge theatrical heavy metal performances, right? So that's kind of what I've really found inspiration from. Also, you know, when Rammstein kind of became popular in the start of the 2000s, or the late 90s, start of the 2000s, that's when I was in school learning German. So that
perfect.
kind of added another level of specialness to it for me. But yeah, those bands who do really theatrical shows, that's always been my jam. So I find bands who do that, and also other artists who do that, because the pop artists are generally speaking very good at that kind of thing. Artists who can create that theatrical experience, which leaves the audience going, "Oh, that was amazing." That's what really speaks to me, and that's where I really find value. So, like the first time I've only ever seen the Murder Dolls live once, which is Wednesday 13's other band with Joey Jordison from Slipknot. I saw them at the Big Day Out in 2003.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and they just blew me away, because now it's funny because what I remember being the show, I look at videos of the show and it's not the same. somehow my brain warped what I was seeing into what I wanted to see or something. But to me, like their show was incredible to me. I felt like they had taken heavy metal from just a purely straight up we're on stage playing music experience to a theatrical experience for the audience, which had a story and a through line, and all the songs had stories and whatnot. Yes, but then looking at the video, they actually didn't do that at all. So somehow they inspired me to decide that that's an awesome thing to do.
There was enough going on at the time that sparked the inspiration.
Yeah, somehow. I think so. I think also there was an element of surprise that kind of threw me, because I think I'd only heard they had their song Dead in Hollywood, which was their first release. I think I'd only heard half of that song one time on the radio before I went to see them at the Big Day Out. And one of my buddies was telling me how he's like, this band sucks, but whatever, we may as well go see them. I'm like, all right. So I'm standing at the back with pretty low expectations. All I knew it was, you know, Joey from Slipknot on the guitar, and my friend doesn't like this band very much. And then they freaking blew me away. They were fucking fantastic. They became like my favorite band, right? So they and then the rest of Wednesday's work were very inspirational to me, because after that I got into the rest of Murder Dolls and Wednesday 13's work, and there's genius in the simplicity to me. Like in that first Murder Dolls album, Beyond the Valley of the Murder Dolls, like they have a song where the lyrics go, "Murder, murder, yes indeed, KILLING," and things like that. It's so silly, right? But at the same time, to me, it's majestic in its simplicity. You know, I'm like, it's beautiful.
But a lot of that stuff that you're doing now in music, or you have been doing, especially since being in Japan, it's got, at least from the Westerner perspective, it is so ridiculous. It's so crazy. And I think I've always seen that whenever you go into like Harajuku or even Shinjuku itself, you see like the absurd, you see like the weird and the wonderful, and and you get a bit of that in the music as well. I mean, I think I wrote down somewhere, you wrote like that one of the Deadlift songs was like Pump Up Japan, and there was another one, Muscle Cocktail, and I was watching the videos, and I was just, I really enjoyed them, it was so I'm trying to think of the word, but it was so foreign to me because it's so different, but it was so Japanese as well. And I was like, yes, that's so cool because it's so out there.
Right.
So I guess things like that with those lyrics that are very sort of silly and fun, that's obviously helped you with a lot of this stuff in Japan, where that sort of stuff is just really, really exciting and popular.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, I think once you're a foreigner, like I was saying before, simplicity becomes extremely important to communication, and like the non-language oriented communication becomes extremely important to you, just to your role in society. And like the silliness is kind of, if we're both fluent speakers of the same language, then simplicity comes across as childish and silly. But once you throw in a different cultural system and a different language, then it becomes, well, we're communicating and we understand what we're both talking about. Yeah, but the silly factor in like Deadlift Lolita and everything, and the strange factors cannot be denied. But that's also the other thing, is that's what is, I think, really appealing about Japanese content to non-Japanese people, is that it's just so bizarre, and it's something that we could never produce at home without everyone going, "You're a tosser." Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, look, I mean, maybe things will change down the track. I think it'll take a very long time, but I think one of the cool things with, I guess, just the internet is that there's this big exchange of ideas globally, and so we're not so insular as what we used to be. So I think people are finding their little niche interests, their specialities in certain genres and whatever subgenres.
Yeah.
And so I think people are a little bit more open-minded than what they were in the past. But
I think so too. And I think the cheapness of travel, because travel has gotten much cheaper than it was when I was younger, you know, these low-cost carriers and stuff. I mean, I think that's a miracle for the human race. I think that's wonderful. But I don't want to sound like I'm totally down on Australia, though. Australia is a wonderful, wonderful country full of wonderful people, and I miss home very, very much. It's this is the other thing that happens when you live overseas. You appreciate home very much. And yes, like I said at the start of this, I'm like, oh yeah, another Aussie. Oh, great. You know,
but I think sometimes you've got to have that distance. You know, you got to have that distance to really understand where you came from, you know, and even just your understanding your existence, which is always a big sort of you know, complicated thing to deal with. And for some people, they struggle immensely with it. But I think for people that are able to get a wide perspective of different ways of living and different people and different personalities and ideas and opinions, you start to get a little bit more of an understanding of where you fit into the world. Or sometimes it makes it worse, but I think for the most part, you sort of find your place a little bit, or appreciate where you've been and what you've done.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think I recommend to anyone who can get out into the world and kind of explore the world a bit, I recommend you do that, because you will learn vast amounts about yourself and about everyone else.
So one last thing, because I'm keeping an eye on the time. I have held back on watching the Big in Japan doco, and I know that was okay. But the only reason I held back is I thought it'd be so much cool to watch it after I've actually had a conversation with you.
Okay, cool.
I just think, because then I've got a bit of a connection, there's a bit more context, we've had a good conversation, and I'm sort of not playing into whatever that documentary is. But I've seen the trailer, and it's a cool concept, and it looks like it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of different people that have found their own thing in Japan. What sort of attention has that brought you personally? Has that brought you a lot more sort of Western attention?
Of the documentary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did an Aussie tour at the start of 2018 in support of that documentary, which was awesome. So, I mean, from my perspective, it was just wonderful to be able to get home and do a tour, like with, you know, and not just have it be just me, like with something as unique as a documentary to tour with me, because, you know, most artists don't have that. So that was wonderful. But from other perspectives, I mean, I think the producers are still trying to get that documentary out there as much as they can. So they're still pushing it to like film festivals and so forth. So it's kind of bits and pieces come in off the back of that slowly over time as it gets seen by more and more people. Like it never had a huge kind of push like at one time, it's been slowly kind of, okay, well now people in New Zealand have seen it because of that festival, and now people in the Czech Republic have seen it because of that festival. So slowly, people who've seen that kind of get in contact, and they say they got interested in me because of that and whatnot.
Have you found?
But it's a slow burn.
Have you found that you've been contacted by a lot of people from these countries who are inspired by what you do and want to do their own version of what you're doing? So whether it be in Japan, or big in Japan, or anywhere else in the world, have you found that you started to get people like that coming to you and saying, I want to do that too?
Yeah, a lot of that actually. I'm thinking about creating like an information product on how to become like a celebrity in Japan or a celebrity in a foreign market. Because here's the thing, as much as I've done what I've done, I've also been over in these foreign markets for 12 years now.
That's right.
And I've observed all the other foreigners who are over here, because of course it's a small community, so you know everyone. And so I've observed all the other foreigners who are trying to do that, and I've seen a lot of people succeed and fail, and I feel like I'm starting to understand the formula for the success, because I've seen both the successes and the failures respectively. So I feel like I'm starting to see the attributes that have led to people's success. So I'm thinking about starting like making an information product or something that I can
that'd be fascinating.
I can spread around the place.
That'd be fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think
get an understanding.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would be interested in it. So I'm kind of trying to figure that out at the moment. I'm trying to figure out the practicalities of putting it together, because it's, requires quite a lot. To do it properly would require quite a lot of planning and some careful execution. But I would like to get onto that. If I can get through that this year, actually, that I'd be very happy with that. I might see if I can do that. I've forgotten what the beginning of your question was.
Oh, no, that's it. No, that's okay. No, I was just going to say about being contacted by so many people from different countries that want to be big either in Japan or elsewhere.
Yes, sorry. No, that's exactly right. Yeah. So now I perform at these anime conventions all over the world. And at almost every one, when I'm doing like a question and answer, someone will put up their hand and they'll say, it's my dream to be an idol in Japan, or a wrestler in Japan, or like a stuntman in Hong Kong. What's your advice you have for me? So there are plenty of people like this who are interested in doing such a thing, or at least they claim to be interested in doing such a thing. So and also I get a lot of mails from people. I get a lot of emails from people saying, I do this, I'm interested in Japan, what do you reckon? So instead of answering people individually, as I have done thus far, I think I might make a product to direct people to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's if I had to give everyone who's interested in doing something like this a bit of advice right now, it would be go and read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you'll know how to ask people like me correctly for help. Because I tell you what, man, who are the worst at this? The worst at this are pro wrestlers. I'll get messages from pro wrestlers saying, I want to wrestle in Japan, help me.
Yeah.
I'm like, you gotta learn how to make requests, my friend. Holy moly.
Is that Dale Carnegie? That book?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, no, I've read that book. Yeah,
yes.
It's everyone should read that book. It's valuable no matter who you're speaking to anywhere in the world. It's the global communication Bible. I think it's fantastic. I certainly, from being a musician and playing in a band, and we've had our ups and downs in Japan, and Japan's always been, it's got that perception as being very closed off. It's its own market, and I think they take a lot of pride in that. When we do, record deals in other parts of the world, and they want to do multiple markets, international markets, Japan's always completely secluded from that. You get your own label in Japan, and that's it. And so for us at the moment, like we're in the midst of releasing a new album, and we've got a friend on the ground in Japan who's going around and sending some songs to different labels, because we can't do it ourselves, and we've learnt that over the years. So if we go in straight to a Japanese label as a foreigner, it's fine, and sometimes it can work, but for the most part, the referral of somebody local over there has so much more weight. And
so much more.
Yeah, and so that's been a big challenge for us because we've had some. I think we could write a book just about our record label experiences in Japan alone. It's been filled with so much drama over the years, and so for us now,
really,
and good and bad.
What can I ask what kind of things happened?
Oh well, we had one label that no longer exists anymore, and they lost a lot of money, and the owner, the director, killed himself. And
oh my god!
Yeah, and so that happened not long before our album was just about to be released, and then we got picked up by another label. Went okay, but it was one of those things where if they're not confident or they're not happy, it's not a communication thing that you work through. They just shut off. And so there's no more communication anymore. So people just disappeared. And sometimes people disappeared mid-tour when we were in Japan. And we were
really?
trying to chase money. And there might be a trip to a particular place in Nagoya or something like that, trying to track down somebody to ask for some money that we were owed. And it was really, I mean, in hindsight, makes great stories. And no doubt we'll be able to do something later with it all. But it was just one of those things where a bunch of Australians, our grasp of the Japanese language is pretty minimal, and here we are trying to maintain our brand and our band in that country. A lot of great relationships that we've built, and the respect level is like nowhere else. Like you've got to maintain that relationship, you've got to cultivate it. And so when your label disappears for different reasons, then you're sort of like, oh, geez, okay, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
So we're in that process now where it's like we've got to start again with these new relationships and try and build that all up again. So it's interesting. I like the challenge, but
that's good.
It's like nowhere else in the world.
It really is, and they like it that way, and they do their best to keep it that way.
And it's cool. Yeah. And when it works well, it's great. When there's a challenge, then it's definitely a challenge.
That's you articulated that perfectly. That's right. It's wonderful it's wonderful for the most part, but the challenges are extremely challenging.
It's that what was the word before even just making an effort is probably a big part of that. It's
Gumbuddy must.
Gumbuddy must. That's right. So, and I'm gonna write that on the wall here somewhere on a piece of paper. It's gonna remind me. That's gonna be my little thing for 2019. Gumbuddy must.
Good. Good man. Good man. That's awesome.
Well,
good man.
I'm gonna let you go, and I know, like, after stalking you online and looking at all the different things that you're doing, I can see how hectic your life is, but in such a fascinating, exciting way. And I'm just so happy that you've been able to carve out some time and have a chat to me. And I'm going to link to everything so people can check out who you are and what you do. And I'm going to have to embed some Instagram videos of your DJ stuff in China, because that just blew my mind. I'm just looking at it going, that is so cool. That is so cool.
Oh, thank you, mate. Thank you, mate. Well, it's been wonderful to talk to you too, Andy. It's great to put a voice to the face. And by the way, I'm very impressed that you're doing this podcast in Australia, by the way. I think you're kind of setting yourself up to be an Aussie Joe Rogan.
Oh, kinda. Love it. That's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
And I'm a massive Joe Rogan fan. So if you set yourself up as the Aussie Joe Rogan, I'll be very, very proud of you.
Very cool. Appreciate it. Well, I'll write that on the wall as well.
Good man, Aussie Joe Rogan, Andy Dowling, Aussie Joe Rogan. Let me give everyone listening a quick message as well before we leave.
Absolutely,
mate. I guess I should probably do all this. Ladybeard.com, Ladybeard_Japan on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. Ladybeard on Weibo, and because there were so many fake Ladybeards, right? I couldn't just use Ladybeard because that was already taken. So everybody, please check out Ladybeard. Ladybeard official on YouTube as well. And I just want everyone to. This is kind of one of the things I've been trying to do with my career. Like, if there were a message that I wanted to give the world. Keep in mind, you're currently talking to a cross-dressing pro wrestling heavy metal singer in, living in Asia and whatnot, and active all over the world. So it's definitely a life that's very interesting. And it's a life that I think a lot of people look at and think, oh my goodness, that's amazing. And people think that it's impossible. I just want people to realize that whatever you want to do, you're perfectly capable of doing it. The only thing stopping you from doing it is you're not getting up and going and doing it. So, I feel like really a lot of people kind of live in the matrix and they have these brilliant dreams and aspirations, but then they don't pursue them because because dad said they should be an accountant or something like that, right? Or they feel this sense of, no, but it's not what's done, but balls to what's done. You can do anything the hell you want. You just have to go and do it. That's what people fail to understand. You can do it. Just go and do it. And now you're doing it. So if I can leave everyone with a message, and I think if everyone went and pursued all those amazing aspirations and dreams and goals that they have, as a species, we would all be lifted. So for everyone's sake, if you have a thing you want to go and do, I'm not saying necessarily go and do it, because your life is your life and you do what's best for you. But listen, if you want to do it, you can do it. Just go and do it. Oh, thank you very much. Inspirational speech finished.
Drop the mic.
Right.
Well, I think it's a great way to end it off. And let's catch up in June.
Yeah, mate. I can't wait. Thanks so much for talking, Andy. This is great.
If you want to get into Ladybeard, become a Ladybeard fan, you can go and check out the videos and music that I've put into the show notes over at andysocial.net, or you can go over to ladybeard.com, where it's sort of the portal page to all the social media links. There's some videos, there's all sorts of stuff on there. He's done a really good job on that website. And I'm gonna embed some Instagram videos of him DJing in China in December. It is just next level. It is so cool. And you just got to check it out. So I'll put some stuff over in the show notes over there. But you can follow Ladybeard on Instagram, which I think is Ladybeard_Japan, which is the same as Twitter. And Facebook's Ladybeard Japan without the underscore. But it'll all be in the show notes over at andysocial.net. So go and check it out. But thank you so much, Ladybeard. Lots and lots of fun. I really, really enjoyed that. Updates. No updates to give you. Lord, look, maybe there's an announcement by now because I'm recording this one a little bit in advance, but go over to lord.net.au or follow us on the socials and see whether we've announced anything yet. But we're really close. We've, at the time of recording this, we are at the final stages of fixing or finalizing our video clip. All the music's done. It's pretty much ticked off and ready to go. And we're just working out the final things as far as dates and the sequence of events of how we want to get things out. But lots of cool stuff. You guys are going to love this album if you have been a fan of us. And if you haven't got into our music yet or haven't had the chance, go over to lord.net.au. Check it out. And if you've only heard one song and you haven't been convinced, shoot me a message and let me know what you listen to and what you normally like. I reckon I can find a Lord song that you may like, because we have a wide range of different styles that we incorporate in our music. And for anybody that's been following us for quite a few years will definitely agree that we are very varied in the styles of music that we play. We put it all under the umbrella of metal, just straight up heavy metal, but we do incorporate a lot of the subgenres that we absolutely love ourselves. So that's one thing that we take a lot of pride in. So if you've only heard one song and you weren't convinced, let me know. And I'll try to tailor a song to your personal preference, and we'll see whether we can get you over the line and into a Lord fan status. Lord.net.au. Check it out. Self-starter updates. I am recording season 2. Season 2 is going to be out in June of this year, so a little while off, but I want to record the entire series before I release season 2. So we'll see how we go with that. But so if you've got any guest recommendations, help me out, guys. I really want to get as many recorded as possible. So if you know anybody that is self-employed, has their own business, has a really cool way of earning a bit of extra money, has that second job, a little side hustle, whatever it might be, shoot me a message, give me a recommendation. Maybe it's you. Maybe you might fit one of those little categories. Let me know, because I'd love to consider you for the podcast and hopefully get you on. You can also go to selfstarter.com.au. I am still churning out blogs. By the time this episode comes out, hopefully I've continued that great discipline that I have currently created for myself. There's been a few blogs that have been put out so far, and I'm hoping to continue that. I have some stretch goals, which I'm hoping I can achieve before June. So that is a lot of blog content. I think I mentioned in a previous episode, and there's going to be around 100 blog posts. So there's a lot of content there. It's all there. I just have to sit down and stop fidgeting and just get on with it. So it's a big thing. So it's a little challenge for myself. So selfstarter.com.au, go and read the content, share those articles around, share the episodes around, give me some guest recommendations. Go and check it out. Hope you like it. And that's it, folks. Episode 165. Oh, I'm losing track. Is in the bag. That'll do. Thank you so much, as always, for supporting the podcast. It means a lot. I think at the time of this episode coming out, I'm getting close to my trip to New York with Jess. We're over there for about 10 days, just a holiday. But as I've been mentioning in previous episodes, if you've got any recommendations of people that are living in New York or very close by, let me know. I'd love to get them on the podcast. I have a few people that I've approached, some lofty people, but you got to be in it to win it, and we'll see what happens. But I'm going over there for a holiday, so I'm not really intending to do podcasts, but I'm going to take all the equipment over anyway, just in case. So if you know somebody, you think there might be an interesting story, someone that's doing something really cool over there, let me know. We'll see how we go. But lots of great guests coming up. This episode this week was one of those guests that I was just chomping at the bit to share with you guys. But there's a lot of really cool guests coming up. I'm doing a little bit of travel before I go to New York. I'm actually traveling to somebody interstate to do a podcast, which this person has been on my list since day dot. And I only got the balls to contact them about a month or two ago, and they said yes straight away. So there you go. It's always the case. So I'm going to travel interstate to see that person, and that's going to be really, really cool. And I've got some other little things happening. So building up the bank of episodes and really enjoying it, blah, blah, blah. Keep talking. Okay, that's enough of me. Until next week, folks, keep sharing around, keep supporting the podcast, keep listening to me waffle on. Love yous lots, and ta-ta.